Nón Việt Nam này Ly. Nón Việt Nam này.
News team, and we have also journalists, photographer, reporters, videographers on the ground capturing this historic moment. What's going to happen next is this. There is going to be a little bit of a break. The new Pope is presumably getting into his new clothes, and then he is going to appear on the balcony. But before that, the proto-deacon of the College of Cardinals, that's Cardinal Dominique Mamberti of France, is going to show up on the balcony that you see in the images at the middle of St. Peter's Basilica, and in Latin he's going to say, "We have a Pope," and then he's going to announce, again in Latin, the birth name of the Pope and the name that the new Pope has chosen as his. And that's something that everybody here is looking forward to hearing, because it will be one of the first signs as to his style, his personality, his priorities. It was that way when Pope Francis chose Francis, the first Francis, as a Pope. So that will be our very first sign. We'll also be looking for what the Pope is wearing. Buonasera, that's just good evening. And everybody went wild, because it was a sign of what would become, in fact, Pope Francis's papacy, a simpler style, a humbler style, a style closer to the people. Now, I told you it's 133 cardinal electors. It is extremely likely that the new Pope is one of them. Which one? We really don't know. Some have been talked about and have been discussed, and we have covered them as likely contenders, but there have been surprises before, so we're not going to speculate on that. We will bring you the news as we have it. As I said, it's going to take a little bit, maybe an hour. Again, we don't know that either, before the proto-deacon of the College of Cardinals shows up on the big decorated balcony that you see in St. Peter's Basilica that has the red drapings. And a little bit later, that's when the Pope will make his very first message. Now, we shouldn't expect a long message. That will come at some point in the next few days, when there will be a formal first Mass of inauguration of the new Pope. Tonight it will be just a greeting. But as I said, the people are going to be streaming in from all around Rome. The other thing that you might have been able to hear in my background, I don't know, but it was quite loud, is that almost all the bells in Rome, and there's hundreds of Catholic churches here, have been tolling at the same time to tell the people, as they have for many, many decades, that again, there is a new leader, a successor, not just to Pope Francis, who passed away on the day after Easter, on April 21st, at age 88, and therefore got this whole process of the conclave to select his successor in motion, but also, and to the believers perhaps more importantly, the successor to Peter. That's why St. Peter's Square is called that, by the way. It's because St. Peter's Square is in front of St. Peter's Basilica, and St. Peter's Basilica was built on the tomb of the Apostle Peter, whom Jesus chose, according to the Gospels, to be the first Pope, the first leader of the Church. And by the way, that's why he was given the name Peter. Peter wasn't called Peter, but that was the name that Jesus gave him to indicate, it means stone in Greek and in many languages, in Italian too, it's pretty close. Pietro, Pietra, that's the name for rock. It will be the rock on which the Church would stand. And this is still the role that the new Pope, whoever it is, has been chosen to fulfill. A tremendous responsibility that has been in line with the solemnity of the ceremonies that we have seen so far and the symbolism. The cardinals, for example, entered the Sistine Chapel under lock and key eventually for their conclave, wearing red. Red is a symbol of the blood of martyrs, and many martyrs were killed. In fact, let me give you a fact that is not fun, but is relevant. You might have seen that in the middle of
annuncio vobis gaudium magnum. Habemus papam. Eminentissimum ac reverendissimum Dominum, Dominum Robertum Franciscum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae Cardinalem Prevost, qui sibi nomen imposuit Leonem XIV.
Welcome back to the Associated Press live stream on the day the cardinals have chosen the new Pope. The AP has just confirmed that it is the first new updates here live as we wait for the new Pope to show.
La pace sia con tutti voi. Fratelli, sorelle carissimi, questo è il primo saluto del Cristo risorto, il buon pastore che ha dato la vita per il gregge di Dio. Anch'io vorrei che questo saluto di pace entrasse nel vostro cuore, raggiungesse le vostre famiglie, a tutte le persone, ovunque siano, a tutti i popoli, a tutta la terra. La pace sia con voi. Questa è la pace di Cristo risorto, una pace disarmata e una pace disarmante, umile e perseverante. Proviene da Dio, Dio che ci ama a tutti. Chiediamo questa grazia speciale di Maria, nostra Madre. Ave Maria, piena di grazia, il Signore è con te. Tu sei benedetta fra le donne e benedetto è il frutto del tuo seno, Gesù. Santa Maria, Madre di Dio, prega per noi peccatori, adesso e nell'ora della nostra morte. Amen.
Been telling us for the last days and time since Pope Francis passed that they wanted to hear. It was a message of peace, a message of unity, a message of dialogue. His first words were, "Peace be with you," delivered with a smile that we have not seen on the very solemn faces of the cardinals as they walked into the Sistine Chapel to elect the new Pope just yesterday, just a little over 24 hours ago. Pope Leo XIV was known as Cardinal Robert Prevost of Chicago. He's an American missionary to Peru. He held different roles in that Latin American country, including bishop. He's fluent in Spanish, and in fact tonight he switched from Italian into Spanish. He was also chosen a couple of years ago by Pope Francis to come to Rome and to lead the very powerful office for bishops, a position again that might sound insiderish, but made them a very well-known quantity within the Roman clergy and the Roman curia. As I said, the crowd behind me, it just absolutely exploded with cheers. They've been waving flags. We've seen people crying. And we've noticed many of the cardinals, including former Cardinal Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, smiling broadly as this announcement has been made. The crowds are now continuing to mill. There's a very festive atmosphere. There are lots of flags around. So it's a very, very special moment for the world's 1.4 billion Catholics and for everybody else who's waiting to see what more they can find out about the line of the next papacy. One thing that is relevant to bring up perhaps is that there were a lot of expectations about where the new Pope was going to be from. Remember, Pope Francis was the first Latin American Pope, and now we have the first American Pope. So let me tell you a little bit more about him. Again, he's 69 years old. He belonged to the order and in fact was eventually... So let me tell you a little bit more about him. Again, he's 69 years old. He belonged to the order and in fact was eventually the Superior General or the Order of St. Augustine, which is named after one of the most famous and important figures, St. Augustine, in Catholic theology. The name that he has chosen for himself, Leo XIV, is also in line with a lot of different popes throughout history. He was chosen in that sense a more traditional name that Francis did, who was the first pope named Francis. A couple of other things. Again, he was the head of the office of bishops for the Vatican. That means that he was in charge of literally vetting all bishop nominations from around the world, a very global, if you will, presence, something in line with his experience in Latin America as a missionary. It is also, as I said, really remarkable to see the very broad smiles. Let me recap these very hectic last 24 hours for you. Prevost, of course, was one of the 133 cardinal electors who yesterday afternoon around 4 p.m. in a very solemn ceremony walked into the Sistine Chapel, which is just to the right of St. Peter's Basilica, where he has just appeared, and they started voting to choose the successor to Pope Francis. It's been a relatively quick conclave, as I said, just a little over 24 hours. Several rounds of voting. We had black smoke last night, signifying that nobody had been chosen. We had black smoke around midday, signifying again that nobody was chosen. And then finally, white smoke. This afternoon, coming out around 6 p.m. local time here in Rome, a beautiful spring afternoon and evening, blue sky, and this white smoke just really took off in the sky, like the little wisp of clouds that we've been seeing all day. And a very, very festive cheer came out of the entire crowd. People have been streaming to reach St. Peter's Square, and let me remind you just very briefly why it is called St. Peter's Square and St. Peter's Basilica. This is because Pope Leo XIV, Robert Prevost of Chicago, is now not just the successor to Pope Francis, he is the successor of Peter, the first pope, the disciple of Jesus, whom Jesus chose, according to the Gospels, to be the leader of the church, the very rock on which the church has been founded. We're going to be hearing a lot more about the Pope, probably not from him tonight. Let me tell you what we expect to see over the next few days. There will be his first Mass celebrated here at St. Peter's Square. We obviously don't know the details yet, but we will continue to bring you updates, so please continue to follow both our live coverage and the latest news on apnews.com, as well as our live blog that is up. We have a large team